this event, the airport released a statement indicating that Federal Aviation Administration is reinitiating consultation under the Endangered Species Act with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to evaluate impacts to the rusty patch bumblebee. So construction initially scheduled for November 1st will be suspended until further federal consultation is completed. So that's all through October. Now in November, since November 9th, since our last public meeting, which was on November 2nd, on November 9th, airport staff continued to refuse to collaborate with local experts on a redesign of the expansion. And they stated that they plan to construct the road through the Prairie as originally designed, as it's part of the future expansion south of this area. And it's important to note that any airport expansion plans at or south of Cessna Drive have not undergone any environmental assessment or other public review process in recent history. November 16th, Governor Pritzker visited Rockford Airport to announce funding for aviation workforce training. And when asked about Balboa Prairie, he said, "I really believe that as we fight for our climate, our environment, as we protect our environment, that we can also do so while creating jobs that we don't need to have a trade-off here." On November 18th, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources wrote a consultation letter to the Federal Aviation Administration. And the airport board held their first public meeting in 2 months, and several conservationists spoke during the public meeting comment period. On November 19th, attorneys for Natural Land Institute filed a 60-day notice of violations of the Endangered Species Act to federal agencies. December 1st, IDOT, or Illinois Department of Transportation, announced that Rockford Airport was awarded $3.6 million in Rebuild Illinois Airport Capital Improvement Program money to construct the airport midfield entrance road and utility corridor. So that's all I have for a recap on what's been happening. And now at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Kuroda from Mississippi Audubon. And she is going to talk about a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that we have. So Jennifer.
Hello, I think there is a slide.
Yes.
Yeah, so there were some things that unfolded in the Facebook group and perhaps didn't necessarily carry over to the public meeting, but we just want to make sure that we are clear in where we stand with equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we have this statement, and I just want to read it here, and then if anyone has any thoughts or input, please, I welcome you to share that. But we want to hold a space of healthy dialogue and community for as many people as possible to see a space for themselves as advocates for Balboa Prairie. Differences of opinion are welcome. However, mean-spirited, abusive, hateful, or racist comments will only hinder building support and therefore are not acceptable. We believe that race, inclusivity, Black Lives Matter, and intersectionality with environmentalism are appropriate conversations. They are interconnected and relevant to our goal of saving Balboa Prairie. We encourage everyone to broaden their understanding of these ideas and to engage in broad, respectful discussion. If we are able to learn and grow together, we'll have a stronger, more inclusive, and thus more effective team. And this is how we will keep Balboa Prairie safe. We just want to make sure that everyone feels included in that conversation of saving Balboa Prairie, or whether they're actions, and you don't necessarily have to participate in the work groups or in any of the activities. You can proceed with your own actions and go forward in your own way, but we certainly welcome any ideas to be shared within the group as well.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Okay, now we're going to move on to Amy Dahl from Friends of Illinois Nature Preserves, who's going to give us a few updates. So Amy, go ahead, take it over.
All right, thanks, Kim. And thank you, Jen, for sharing that statement with us. I just wanted to provide just a brief overview of where things stand from the legal aspect of saving Balboa Prairie. Natural Land Institute is taking the lead on behalf of really conservationists around the region, the state, and the country for the legal aspect of saving Balboa Prairie. So just a quick update. In October, late October, there was a complaint filed for injunctive relief, basically asking the airport not to destroy the prairie until further environmental and other regulatory assessment is performed and that alternate plans are considered. And it's asking for the court to compel actions by the FAA and US Fish and Wildlife by doing a supplemental environmental assessment. The court should declare the environmental assessment and the finding of no significant impact invalid, and that it asks the court to prohibit any action by the airport until the new environmental assessments have been completed. This complaint cites the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, and that act requires that all agencies study, develop, and describe appropriate alternatives, which was not done in this case. The rusty patch bumblebee's presence on the site hadn't been considered when the first environmental assessment was done, and the FONSI, or that finding of no significant impact, is therefore invalid according to the complaint, and that's what we are asking the court to find. There was a motion for a temporary restraining order that was filed. That was withdrawn when the airport agreed to stop construction. But of course, there is a right to come back should there be any action by the airport that looks like they're going to move in destruction of the prairie. There was a request from NLI and their lawyers to be able to ask the airport to mark the prairie and to give monitoring access to the prairie and to meet with the consultants. That was denied by the airport 5 days after that request was made. The other significant action that's taken place is that the notice of intent to sue the federal agencies was delivered, and that intent to sue is there's a requirement in the law that 60 days notice has to be given for making a claim on the Endangered Species Act. So that has been delivered to the federal agencies. That notice also asked for the records that have been requested through the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA. To date, there have been records that have been requested from federal agencies, including the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and they have not yet provided the requested records, which is a violation of the Freedom of Information Act. The federal defendants are also in violation of the Endangered Species Act by the failure to prevent the potential destruction of the bee, the endangered species. And their agency's inaction regarding that protection of the bee is unlawful. So those are the things that have taken place to date. The last action was the 60-day notice, the notice of intent that was delivered on November 19th. Since that time, things have been quiet, but that doesn't mean that things aren't happening. There is a deadline, there's a legal deadline of December 28th for the airport to respond to the complaint, and January 2nd is the deadline for the federal defendants to respond to the complaint as well. So we expect within the next couple of weeks that we will see some action in the courts. In the meantime, NLI, the lawyers, and all of us, quite frankly, should be continuing to press the federal and state agencies for information, and continuing to seek a meeting between NLI and the airport, the meeting that was denied earlier in November. The lawyers are going to be prepared. The legal team is prepared to file for another TRO. Sorry, that slide says TRP. It should be TRO, temporary restraining order. And then once that 60-day notice is up, then they will amend the complaint to add the Endangered Species Act claim. So it won't be just a NEPA claim, but it will also be an Endangered Species Act claim after the 60-day notice period ends. So I think there've been a lot of questions about what's going on from the legal aspect. So those are the the updates. If people are interested, the original complaint that was filed in court and the NOI, the notice of intent, both of those are available if you want to read through the documents. Those are both available on the Save Balboa Prairie website. So if you wanted to read through those, I think there's potentially some really great information if you're interested in learning how those laws work and where the violations took place. But the other thing to note is that, and the reason part of the reason we'll continue to have these meetings is that there has to continue to be an approach of advocacy and a legal approach. And so it's not enough that there's lawsuits and these things that there are legal claims happening, but people have to stay involved in advocacy as well. So, and Kim, I'm not sure who's next after me, but that's the legal update.
Jesse is next.
All right.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Jesse.
Hi. So thank you for those of the members of the group who've been going out and monitoring the prairie. We haven't had as much activity on our sign-up sheet as I'd like to see. That's really helpful just in keeping track of who is going out and when. So we know that if there's kind of holes in the schedule, it would be really helpful if people do sign up, although I do know that people have been going out on their own and from time to time reporting back to me. So I really appreciate that. I was out there today and it was dusk already, but I noticed that there were more heavy equipment parked along the top of the prairie, and they've kind of made like more of a gravel roadbed up on top of the prairie. So I'd really like people to be going out, ideally morning and evening if possible, to monitor to see if anything's changing. We want to make sure that the road doesn't continue through the prairie. So we do have a sign-up sheet that was posted on the Facebook page, and it's linked here. So if anyone has time to go out, you can sign up on it's just a simple Google sheet. There's a space also to put what you've seen, any kind of anything you've noticed. And if you notice construction on the prairie, you should really call me immediately. My phone number is there, and I will alert NLI and get things rolling on that front. So I'm free to take any questions if anyone has any. Well, I think it's really important that, now we continue monitoring as much as possible. If anyone has questions as to, kind of where we're looking, they want to become a monitor, but you haven't seen what's been happening so far and are unfamiliar with the site, you can reach out to me as well, and I can direct you to some maps and some photographs and help you kind of get situated. It also really helps to bring a set of binoculars out there. There was no security parked when I was out there today, but sometimes there is security parked there on Cessna Drive. So I'm making it hard to see most of the prairie, but if you have a pair of binoculars, you should be able to see most of it. But please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can provide you with support for knowing what to look for.
Thank you, Jesse, for all your work on this, coordinating it, and thank you to everybody who has gone out there and kept watch over the prairie. Thank you very much for all your time and effort on this. And I was trying to, Amy, can you post the URL for signing up? It wasn't working for me when I tried it. Can you post that in the chat when you have a chance? Or Jesse? Okay, so I'm not sure who was going to talk about this, but I will just read this quote that seems to be very relevant and poignant. A nation may be said to consist of its territory, its people, and its laws. The territory is the only part which is of certain durability. Laws change, people die, the land remains. A famous quote by Abraham Lincoln, and we feel it's very relevant in this situation. Balboa Prairie is an ancient prairie. been around for 8,000 years, and we want it to be around for another 8,000 years or more. So thank you for including this slide with this poignant quote. Okay, next, Amy, I think you're going to talk about this.
Mm-hmm. I am, yes. Thanks, Kim. So I don't know if people saw this or not. There was I think somebody had posted it to the Facebook page, which was really helpful. I don't remember who had linked it there, but it was helpful. And then a couple other people had kind of posted or sent emails about it. But there was an announcement last week that airports throughout the state had been awarded money through the Restore Illinois Airport Capital Improvement Program Awards. Included in those awards were $3.6 million to the Rockford Airport for the midfield road construction, a road that we're all very familiar with. Just a quick update about these funds. And some conversations that we've had with the Illinois Department of Transportation aeronautics staff that administers this. So most of the time when the airport gets funding, even if it comes through IDOT, it does end up, it's usually federal money that the Department of Transportation is simply administering through IDOT. These funds are different in that these are actual Illinois state funds through the Restore Illinois program. So those funds have been set aside for the Rockford Airport. However, in speaking with the Department of Transportation staff, they're not guaranteed. There is a process that Rockford would need to follow that would include submitting design plans to the Illinois Department of Transportation and working with their design team. Typically, these funds are not reimbursed. So the fact that the project is already started already makes this one a little bit unusual. But I did confirm with two different staff at IDOT in their aeronautics department that these funds could be used to redesign the road and could be used to pay for it and to pay for part of that project. But there is no guarantee that necessarily that it would be funded, but that does mean that there are now state funds available for the Rockford Airport for this midfield road construction. So I think Matt's going to talk a little bit about all the action items, but I just wanted to share a little bit of update on the bureaucracy, I guess, of how these state funds are now available to Rockford. One of the interesting things also is that until this point, the project for this entire expansion has been local funds or federal funds, but there haven't been state funds for this particular project that have been allocated, but these are state funds now that have been allocated. So I think if there are questions, I can try to answer them about it. But
Sue
otherwise,
raised your hand.
All right, Sue, do you have a question I might be able to answer?
No, I'm sorry, that was a mistake.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I saw a question from Joyce Gibbons, which is a good question. She says you are suing the federal agencies for the ESA for the impact to Bombus affinis, which is the rusty patch bumblebee. There are several state endangered threatened species at Balboa Prairie. Can you explain why we can't sue IDNR or the state? Are there no state statutes that protect species listed on the state endangered threatened species list? Just asking for clarification.
And I think there was some discussion, and I was not part of those discussions, but I know I've heard kind of on the edge of those discussions, there was some discussions about whether or not the state agencies would also be sued and be named. So one of the challenges is once there is a lawsuit, communication tends to stop. And so the federal agencies are no longer communicating about the project because of the pending lawsuit. The priority as I understand it at the time, was to simply get time so that the Prairie could be saved and go back to the federal agencies. The responsibility primarily for this, for doing the environmental assessment in this project, as I understand it, was the FAA. And so that was the reason for it being primarily the federal agencies.
Okay, thanks, Amy. And then Laura Stamp said, can we ask Pritzker to hold these funds, making them contingent on redesign of the airport to save the prairie? And Laura, we're going to address that in the action steps. So we'll answer that question in a moment. All right, Matt, go ahead, take over.
Well, Domenico has a question.
Yes, thank you. My question is there been a master plan presented? I mean, we've seen the facility and we've seen the road, but has there been a true master plan, like the whole site plan presented? Because I saw on one of the posts that there was a 1994 plan that encompassed the whole site all the way down to and into the floodway. In fact, they wanted to put a third runway right in the, touching the floodway. So I'm wondering, all this construction that's still going on, first of all, why is it going on if there's questions on the redesign? And also, has Fish and Wildlife or IDNR and other people seen the full plan to actually have a full assessment of it?
I certainly don't know the answer. Does anyone else on the call tonight have an answer to that?
I have not seen one in any of the places that I've asked. When I have asked for documents from the airport, I'm not presented with a full plan. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the FAA at this point aren't talking. When I asked for documents from the Illinois Department of Transportation regarding the grant application, they said that they have not seen plans for this project because typically for these Restore Illinois funds, they get a description of the project. And once the funds are awarded, then the agency, the airport would work with the Department of Transportation for the design. And so there wouldn't have been design plans required for this Restore Illinois funding. So I have not yet been able to get them, but there may be others on the call who have been able to get somebody to find something. But the 1994 thing is the closest I've seen.
Yeah, and also Mr. Cicero, the chairman of the committee, in his article, the same issue that Carrie was on page 29, he did mention a plan, and I believe he mentioned 40 years old. I'm not quite sure about that, but it's a very old map, and he said that it was basically decided then, and I suspect that's what they're following. And if that's the case, I think our lawyers or anybody else should ask to see that plan because according to Mr. Cicero, the plan has been finalized.
Okay, thank you, Domenico.
Domenico, that's a good point, and we should ask the airport for that.
Yeah, I made a note about that. Thank you. Okay, Samantha Chavez said to everyone in the comments, the FAA must evaluate the cumulative impacts for all foreseeable future work too, and it says their own guidance to comply. Well, that she's saying that that's their own guidance to comply with NEPA. Thanks, Sam, for that. Okay, are we ready to move along to Matt for next steps? Action items?
I'm ready, but if people have questions and comments, I think that we have time. So I think this is a good conversation to be having. If people have comments or anything that they want to say now, I'd like to open it up to the, 49 people in this call who might have something to say or something to share.
Thanks, Matt. I saw something from Jack Shoba that says, have we seen the 2 plans that were rejected? Maybe there are some ideas there. Any response to that?
Well, I saw, I think one plan that they said was rejected, and it was there was virtually no different than the one that they're proposing. It was just a matter of size, but the actual concept where things went are exactly the same. So the prairie would be destroyed. Also, I noted in my letter to the FAA, but also in one of my presentation, that road going through the prairie has nothing to do with this first phase of development. That road is only needed if the third phase of development happens, because the first phase and the second phase that they are proposing will not need that road. So the services can be provided with what's available right now. And I'm not sure why they are putting this road right there. They want to build this road through the prairie right now. I think that road should be placed with the development that it directly services. And that could take years to come to fruition. So I think this road is an abuse. It has nothing to do with what they're proposing to service. And it's just a way to make way to open up the space so they don't have to deal with the prairie anymore. That's my interpretation of it.
Thank you, Domenico. Anybody else have any response or comments or questions?
Okay, I have another question. I know we're going through the legal procedure, and I am no longer in touch with the official members of the professional design team. So I'm just curious, and I don't need to know the details, but I'm just curious if this team is pursuing an alternative plan right now, or are we just waiting for the legal aspects to go through?
Does anyone have an answer to that that's with us tonight? I'm sorry, Domenico, I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay. Well, it just goes to the point that was expressed, and I think, and I totally agree with those criteria that were stated for participating in the group, is that we should share what we have. And I guess I'm saying, if there are people that are not sharing what they're doing, I hope there's a very good reason for that.
Domenico, I don't know if anybody else is working on alternative plans, but I do know that the airport has made it very clear in their response that they are not willing to meet with any alternative designs or consider any alternative designs at this point. Right.
So that brings to the question: what do we do if they stick to that, and if our lawsuit doesn't come to a reasonable conclusion to save the prairie? So my concern is that if people don't see alternatives, like visual alternatives, and everything rests on word description, that the message is not going through, that there are other possibilities than destroying the prairie. And I'm wondering what are the ways that we can actually, propagate that. I posted on I don't know, a couple of days ago, for example, there was a call, Durban and Duckworth Day, from another group concerning other issues, environmental issues. And I'm wondering if that could have an effect. Now, I know Durbin is very involved. I'm following his posts, and he's very involved with all kinds of things going on in Congress. So he might not be, this might be his priority right now. But I think we should really focus on getting all our points in front of the people. I was disappointed in Tammy Duckworth's answer to the letter, where she basically said, well, I'm just going to wait for what Fish and Wildlife is going to decide and then go with that. But the question is, what is the airport authority presenting to Fish and Wildlife? Because if they're presenting just the road and Fish and Wildlife are restricted by their process to examine just what's presented in front of them, then that's not going to help us. So we must force a way to get the full plan, the ultimate plan. What is the goal? What is this either 1994 plan or another plan that they're working towards, as stated by Mr. Cicero, in front of Fish and Wildlife, because that's the only way that we can have a full environmental impact. And I'm particularly concerned with some of the substances and chemicals that come out of airports, especially dealing with water quality, and in particular, the PFAS, which are pretty detrimental to our health. And I would like to know how the airport is handling those, because if those get in the water, then the whole community is in danger. So there are lots of questions that are not being answered by the airport authority. So the other question I have, the airport authority, I think I made a note here, is, let's see if I can find it. I have too many notes. Okay, I can't find it, but they describe themselves as a government private entity or as a government entity. So I still don't understand, and this is the question that's been bugging me since the beginning. They are in ownership, but they are a government entity in the sense that they are chosen by the people that we elect, and they are receiving public money to carry out most of this work. So what is it that what is it legally? What are they legally bound as a government entity? Because I don't think, I don't know, I don't know the law, but I suspect that their entity is different from a corporate entity, in the sense that the corporate entity actually owns the land, pays the taxes on the land, and each one is responsible for that property. In this case, we have a commission which changes continually. So they don't personally own the land. They belong to this body that is responsible for the good use of the land for the community, and economics are a very important aspect. We all recognize that, but we're not saying that they cannot develop this airport for the economic good. So the question is, why are these 6 people acting like a corporation of private owned land when they are not a corporation? I don't know if that's clear enough, but that's a question that's been bugging me since the beginning. And I'll end there. I don't want to hog the place.
You are correct in that they are not a corporation. They're a government entity. It is a board of, even though those airport commissioners are not elected, they are appointed by elected officials, and they are a government entity that levies taxes. They have Illinois is full of all sorts of special taxing bodies, and the airport authority in Rockford is one such entity they're not a corporation. So when they are spending dollars on projects, many of the times that is public dollars, public tax dollars.
Okay, and in addition to that, shouldn't all their material be available to the public?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we do have some other questions or comments. Suzanne said, has anyone FOIA'd the individual board members and contractors, et cetera, in this situation? Legal precedent found via Google search said that a FOIA can apply to both official and personal communications. I think this goes along with what Domenico was talking about. I think this includes emails, texts, and other written communications, and I'm not sure about phone calls. Has anyone entered with us tonight?
I don't know if anybody has FOIA'd those, but she is correct that that communications about public business on private cell phones or private emails are public information that could be FOIA'd.
Okay. And then Ellen says, can we publish an article with the various plans, and then can they be included in letters to the players?
Okay, I have something to say about that. If he's referring to the plans that I've designed, I don't know if anybody else has submitted the others. I am in the process of creating a PowerPoint presentation to explain the process that I'm taking on how to save the prairie, and going through 3 of the 9 concepts that I developed thoroughly. And that includes also the concept of at least making the floodway into an additional green corridor to attach to the other green corridor of the Kishwaukee River. When I did the analysis, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's a great opportunity. The Kishwaukee River south of Rockford has a lot of parks and protected zones. So it can be a very green river. It can be a very healthy river. I think that the mouth of the river where it meets the Rockford, that is the issue, because the airport is there and also the gravel pits are there that are creating a little bit of trouble. But I think that this is a glorious opportunity. It really is a glorious opportunity to connect fully the Kishwaukee River corridor. We can have the majority of the river protected by native ecosystems. So I'm going to add that to the plan. I know it goes beyond the scope of the actual airport expansion, but I think we need to connect. We need to connect the whole region, what's happening biologically, what's happening economically, and so forth. We can make this into a landmark project that everyone can be proud of. But it won't happen if we just go by these piecemeal presentations that the airport authorities are doing, because, and I know why they're doing it, because they want to avoid the full impact environmental assessment. It's a strategy.
Okay, thank you, Domenico. Some other comments include James McGee said it would be easier to convince people the prairie should be saved if they saw the prairie was being destroyed for parking lots and retention ponds rather than a development or no development scenario. Suzanne said, good idea, already summary of plans. Assume you mean approaches to stopping the destruction here. I was wondering if anyone can hold a sign outside of Senator Duckworth's office in a public area. Is there a plan afoot? So I just want to go back to Domenico for a minute. Are you planning to post that presentation on the Facebook group?
Yes, I am. I'm gathering all the images right now, I think I have half the text done. What I need to do is get a good program to put it all together. I have a very old program, but it might be sufficient for this. I just want to make it, it's going to be a very simple, not too elaborate presentation, but I'm hoping I can keep it within a 10-minute length. But I really want to go over every single step and how it connects to the river, to the environment, how we can actually give the airport a lot. We can give the airport a lot. I have a concept where they can have the third runway. They can have their big depot that they want to put on top of the Prairie. They can have 2 other depots that are similar to the north side of the runway. And they can put 5 buildings to house or to service, the big transport planes. Also, I think this plan of theirs is really shooting themselves in the foot because if they have to put a third runway anywhere below Beltline, there's no room for it. I mean, the only thing that they can put in there is a very short runway. And that means that they're going to be limited to the size of planes that they can service. So what I did, I put a third runway right next to the one that's existing, 700 foot away, which is the minimal FAA will allow. And they can have large cargo aircraft come in on that. And there are specific criteria for designing runways. So they can't just put any runway anywhere, and it has to be at a certain orientation to take advantage of the wind direction and so forth. I mean, it's a very complicated criteria. So I think they just can't, decide in the future, oh yeah, we're going to put a third runway within the floodplain and everything will be fine. Because, these things have to be really researched. The other thing the FAA requires that in any flood zone, which we are in, and anything west of that Prairie is in the floodplain. Everything is in the floodplain. So whatever they construct has to address that. And what I read a little bit on the FAA requirements is that the FAA requires at least a 2-foot difference between the surface of the tarmacs and the flood, the flood levels. So we don't even know the flood levels. I haven't seen a plan that tells me what the flood levels are. I'm sure there is information on that, and I'm sure the airport authorities have that because they need that in order to design. They haven't shared it with us. I'm having trouble finding it. So this is probably something that I'm asking the group. If you have any information regarding the levels of past, flooding events within this floodway and also right up to the Prairie.
Okay, Domenico, I'm going to have to cut you off right there.
Sure.
Thank you for all your comments. We are starting to run out of time, so I'm going to move to Matt Evans and have him go over the action items, and then we'll come back to comments and questions after Matt is finished. Matt, go ahead.
Oh, hello, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. And I have the privilege to tell you about what you can do about it right now. So the most important thing that you can do before the holidays or, right now in the midst of the holidays is you can write a letter to the governor. The governor has the ability to withhold state funds for the road. There are $3.6 million allocated to the road that destroys Balboa Prairie, the actual destructive construction project, the soonest one, at least. And so a letter before, in the next week or two that goes to the governor that is just a few sentences that says withhold this funding, or I care so much about Balboa Prairie and development that I wish there was a different way that this was happening. These are powerful messages. And if they're short and powerful, and there will be drafts of these on the website, the SaveBalboaPrairie.org website, these are the effective communications that our public servants have to have in order to act. And so the first and most important thing you can do right now is to write to the governor. The governor has the ability to withhold the funds that build the road. Secondly, staying connected to the Balboa Prairie Facebook page and the website, visiting it once, 3 times a week. That's the kind of thing that'll keep you up to date as an individual, as a constituent, as someone who lives in Illinois and is represented by the Illinois Natural Areas Inventory, which this site falls under as registered as a site of outstanding ecological quality. This is the kind of action and way to stay up to date that is the most relevant right now. The other and admittedly more challenging, but just as important action that you can do is to write the airport commissioners. The airport commissioners represent the surrounding communities in this area that are actually the direct beneficiaries of the resource that is the Balboa Prairie. And so those commissioners have been receiving messages for, almost 4 or 5 months now. And they actually, as far back as 2018, a man named Terry Dyer, who was a historian and expert on Camp Grant, which was within the area we're talking about, testified that this airport development was actually impacting something special to people, not just nature. And that's the Camp Grant site, which there are plenty of informational resources out there for you to learn about on the SaveBalboaPrairie.org website. So in addition to that, your federal legislators in Illinois also have a say in this. There are $18 billion coming to Illinois from the infrastructure plan, and over $600 million of that is allocated to airports alone. There's a good case to be made in a letter that you write to your public servants that the Rockford Airport services 4 states, and many of the cargo shipments that are going into there are critical right now, as we have a backlog of shipping containers out in the ocean, but we have an opportunity to develop sustainably at the Rockford Airport. And so there's plenty of fuel for your letter here to be effective in changing the minds of the commissioners and your federal and state legislators. Development is important. We all need to continue to understand that and also communicate that to everybody who is a decision maker in this process. But sustainable development it's the 21st century. We're in a time when, there are only fragments of these ecosystems left, and we are just learning to understand them. And at this point, they are our libraries for understanding the future of sustainable perennial agriculture and other ecologically important principles that we will be going forward living with our grandkids and the ones we care about. And so this is a resource. This is a natural resource, and we need to convey that more and more to people, and specifically to the decision makers. And that really starts with the airport commissioners. And if they're not going to change their mind, then we need to go above their head, over their head to their bosses, and make sure that we're writing letters to the people who are giving them the money to do this. And that is the state and the federal government. So in addition to that, lots of people have been donating their time and money to this effort, and the legal expenses are important to be supporting. And so while we are writing letters and having meetings and posting flyers in the restaurants and all over town, we also need to be donating money. That is important. And I'll just say it flat out. Money in this event or this campaign is important. So let me talk about you now. The most important thing right now, also including letters, is to commit. We need some people who are going to, just like in October, when we were able as a group, as a concerned group of citizens, to delay this destruction of this prairie that needs to continue. The amount of people who are involved with this probably needs to triple or quadruple so that there are more voices heard, more perspectives, and through that, people will listen and understand that this is a bigger issue than they have been hearing about. Of course, we already have a little bit of momentum through this effort and this campaign, but this needs to increase. And as the holidays come about, we, and have been, we need to redouble our commitment and continue to engage with each other so that we are sharing ideas, and through that, help to create new initiatives that we haven't even thought of yet. It will take more people. And that's the message here, is that right now committing to this is more important than ever. We can't be in January and February without already having a lot of people who are working together and forming groups that are coming up with new ideas and sending letters and reaching out to their networks. This is an important moment. And so while we come into a time when we might think that we can sort of, you know, refocus only on some other things in our lives, we also need to come together here about Balboa Prairie, because this prairie has been here for 8,000 years, and just one holiday season doesn't mean we get to just take it off. And that might not be, you know, a call to spend all your time during this season working on Balboa Prairie, but at least, you know, every little bit that anyone can do really helps. And so as a call to action, I would like to ask everybody who's here, there are 48 people, you know, do something, post on Facebook, donate money, write your, as a constituent, write your public servants, make sure that they know that this matters. And with that, I'd like to open it up without taking too much time to any more comments or questions, especially about how you can be engaged. Please ask. We have answers for you about how you can engage with this. So thank you again, everyone, for being here tonight. And there are things that can be done to save this prairie. So we need to take action.
Thanks, Matt. I did want to comment that the letter, we are going to put a letter on the Save Balboa Prairie website. I'm not sure if it'll be ready tonight or it'll be on tomorrow on the website. It's a template that we came up with, and the message does talk, it's addressed to the governor, but it could probably be addressed to the legislators. The main message is, please make sure state funds are not used to destroy this important natural area. I mean, that's how we end it, but it's talking about the governor, you know, thank you, the governor, for your comment. As we protect our environment, we can also do so while creating jobs. We don't need to have a trade-off. That was the governor's quote from his visit here. And then this is a very, we talk about, let me just read the letter so you all know what we're saying, because a lot of you are asking in the chat, well, how can we say this? Let's tell them not to use the funds for this. So that's what this letter is going to say. It says, thank you. First of all, it says, happy holidays, save Balboa Prairie. Thank you for the comment that you made on November 16th at Chicago Rockford International Airport when asked about the pending destruction of the 8,000-year-old Balboa Prairie. You stated, as we protect our environment, we can also do so while creating jobs. We don't need to have a trade-off here. On December 1st, your office announced that the Rockford Airport was awarded $3.6 million in Rebuild Illinois Airport Capital Improvement Program funds to construct the airport midfield entrance road and utility corridor. This is the very road that will destroy Balboa Prairie. I ask that you make sure these funds are only used for construction of a redesigned road that avoids any impact to Balboa Prairie or habitat for the endangered rusty-patched bumblebee. This precious place is part of the heritage of Illinois, and there is a way to work together toward an alternative expansion proposal that protects Balboa Prairie and creates jobs. I can think of no better way to use our Rebuild Illinois funds. Please make sure state funds are not used to destroy this important natural area. Sincerely, and then you can sign your name. So this is something you'll be able to print out. You can add your own, you can copy the text and create your own new letter, and use that as a template. So that's one thing that you can do. And some questions were, can we send, okay, so somebody said that we're working on getting a letter up on the website tonight. Can we visit senators' offices, small groups? Laura said she'd set up meetings. I'm sure that could be done. Anybody else have other ideas that they want to comment or questions?
Kim, I was just going to say it might be helpful if people are willing to take the lead or can be involved in these things, that they put their name and kind of how they want to connect. I know Laura put some things, and apparently James is going to develop a Balboa Prairie dance for TikTok. So I'm excited for that. If people, so that, and we can kind of make some notes and get people connected. And so if people are, if we can, and that way when we're ready in January, I know we'll all be sending letters to the governor's office and things here in the next couple of weeks before the holidays. But I think the similar energy that this movement had in October is going to probably need to come back in January. So if we can find out who is interested in kind of being a part of different teams, that would be helpful.
I only have one comment. Can we add protect the prairie in perpetuity?
To the letter?
Back here in a few years.
Are you referring to the letter that I just talked?
Yeah. So when you write protect the prairie, can we add protect the prairie in perpetuity?
Okay, sure.
I also have a curriculum that I can teach Rockford teachers about the rusty patch bumblebee. I just presented at a conference at Penn State, an entomologist conference, and I would be happy to do that. I'm setting it, I'm trying to find teachers to reach out to so that I can get this organized. And then if people know about the rusty patch bumblebee, then there would be maybe a greater outcry to try to save them. Also, I'm happy to, I think we need to really play out any connections we have. Like, do you know somebody who knows Durban? Do you know somebody who knows Pritzker? Do you know somebody? I think we need to start really pushing on who you know, and then reaching out that way, so that we can get the actual meeting, get the ear of the person, so we can have in-person meetings. And if we can't get the actual in-person meetings, then we'll have to do the impromptu protest / look at us, listen to us kind of thing.
Thank you, Laura. So you're looking for teacher contacts in the Rockford area? Okay. Laura, did you put your email address in the chat?
Well, the curriculum is set up for middle school and high school, but it can be pretty modified. Like 5th grade probably could do it, 5th to through high school.
Okay. Any other comments, or anybody want to volunteer for a specific task?
I'm happy to coordinate the meeting the federal legislators.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, I've talked to Don Harmon in person to his face 3 times about this, and he has not, and he's the state Senator, whatever, he's the head of the state Senate, and he has refused to talk, like to follow up with me. So I'm happy to follow up with him again to see what he can do.
Okay, he's the leader of the Senate Majority Leader. Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments before we end the meeting? If you haven't been checking chat, I urge you to do that in the next minute before we end the meeting, just to see if you can get any ideas or inspiration for following up with anyone who's with us tonight or following up on any of the ideas. All right, as another reminder, our next public meeting right now is set for January 11. We're gonna revise the letter to add in perpetuity for the letter to the governor, and then we'll get that on the website, say balboaprairie.org, by tomorrow sometime, so that you can use that as just printing it out and signing it and sending it to Governor Pritzker. And then we'll start, the working group will have a meeting tomorrow, and we'll again talk about some of the ideas that were discussed tonight and see how we can follow up with the people that volunteered to coordinate things or project. So any other last minute comments or questions? All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight and for all of your interest and effort and helping us with this effort to save Balboa Prairie. And I wish you all happy holidays. This meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody.